Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Horns Huddle here live. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. This is the 7th edition of the Horns Huddle here on MarkRogersTV. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out the channel. Today, we will be talking about recruiting and the FPI that was just released by Bill Connolly. It releases it every year, updates it every week over at ESPN. It's always pretty interesting when that's released. It causes a lot of controversy, a lot of conversation. So we'll talk about that today. On top of Texas had their junior camp, which had a lot of promising young prospects there. So we'll talk about that as well. But before we get started, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps out what we're trying to build on this channel. Thank you guys for being here. Again, here every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Let's jump into it. Texas junior camp. Kind of building up to this moment for Sark. He's held this every year he's been at Texas. It hasn't been as successful as you want it to be, but this year was pretty successful. Coming out of this camp, guys, 15 new offers, 10 to the class of 2026, 4 to the class of 2027, and including 2 quarterbacks. Peyton Houston and Brady Edmond got offers for that 2027 class, so those seem to be the targets for the quarterback room in the 2027 class, and then 1 in 2025. They also seem to be down to 2 quarterbacks for the upcoming class, the 2025 class. It's going to be Dia Bell and Troy Hoon. Dia Bell, the son of Raja Bell, former NBA player, a guy that brought great toughness, great skills to the floor on the NBA court. Hopefully his son can do the same on the field. And then Troy Hoon, who is the 12th quarterback in the country, according to 247. Dia Bell's actually the 4th quarterback. Some have him as high as 2nd, depending on the recruiting site, but we do use 247, and they have him as 4th. I'm going to read you their profiles real quick. So Dia Bell, like I said, the 4th quarterback in 2027, but we'll start with Troy Hoon. Troy Hoon, Greg Biggins, according to him, big, strong frame quarterback and looks all of 6'4", 205 pounds, which, guys, for a guy that's just going to enter a senior season is pretty big. Pure pocket passer and has one of the strongest arms in the class. Now, that's something that's a given. If Steve Sarkisian is looking at you, it's because you can touch all levels of the field with your arm. He's not going to recruit someone that can't do that. We see that with Trey Owens, who just stepped on campus, had a great spring game, and that was his first action as a freshman here on Texas. Gigantic arm, leaped off the tape when we watched the spring game. So, of course, Troy Hoon's going to have that as well. Doesn't run much, but isn't a bad athlete and shows the ability to make throws outside the pocket, rolling left or right. Has good pocket mobility and does a nice job getting his feet set and throwing on balance. Sees the field well, can get to his 2nd and 3rd reads and throws with anticipation. Can continue to improve athletically, but his game is definitely trending up, and it's easy to see why he's among the most coveted recruits in the 26th class. So that is Troy Hoon. We'll talk about Dia Bell in a second. And just so I'm pronouncing that right for the D, it's Dia, D-I-A, and then Bell, B-E-L-L, for Dia Bell, not Diabella. Some people I know it's hard to tell. Very short first name with a short last name as well. So people kind of merge that. But Troy Hoon, I don't think he's going to be the guy at Texas. I think they have focused on Dia Bell so far. I would expect him to actually probably announce his commitment to Texas in a month and a half time. I bet he is committed to Texas by August 1st. Now, could be hard to keep him. He is an out-of-state guy from Florida. So when someone is out of state, it is definitely harder to keep. If you look at most transfers, guys, it's out-of-state guys. It's rare for a guy to transfer from the state he was born in from the school that's in that state. It does not happen. Most of the transfers you see are from a guy that went out of state to a school has decided, hey, I don't really vibe with this. I'm going to transfer somewhere else. So I think Sark, and they talked about this on other networks, he wants someone that's totally committed. And I think he explains that to guys when he's like, they're a number 1 target for Texas. Like, hey, if you're not going to be totally committed to us, do not commit right now. We want you to be 100% firm. So I expect Dia Bell to take other visits, but I think he is the primary guy. Obviously, Troy Hoon is in the mix, but I don't expect, unless Dia Bell goes somewhere else, I expect Dia Bell to be the guy for Texas. And we're going to read a little bit of his scouting report. Actually, he doesn't even have a scouting report, which is surprising to me. But his high school background, guys, he also played basketball. And I think that, his dad was an NBA player. And I love guys with backgrounds in other sports. I think it's very important as a young person to play multiple sports because different sports create different levels of athleticism in different things. I think hand-eye coordination is a big thing for baseball, and I think that can translate to football. I think being able to jump as quickly as you can multiple times in basketball can translate to the football field. Track, especially football coaches will tell you they love when guys run track. So I think it's very important to play multiple different sports, and he's a good basketball player. He's a good football player, and I fully expect him to commit to Texas. So Diabell is the guy I would keep an eye out on as a quarterback for future here at Texas. Troy Hoon is kind of in the background somewhere. I do think if Texas pushed hard enough, if Diabell does go somewhere else, he would commit to Texas. But those are the two names to keep an eye on. I think Diabell is the main focus there. We'll jump into your comments and questions. What's up, Longhorn Nation? Thank you, Jackson, for being here. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Jackson does a wonderful job of promoting the show. I really appreciate it, Jackson. Some other news that came out. So SEC meetings down in Destin, Florida. Texas, first time really being a part of it. A lot of stuff came out of that, guys. Coaches meetings, athletic director meetings, Chris Del Conte, calling the best rivalry in the SEC, now the Red River rivalry. So Texas jumping in, cannonball right into the pool, making themselves known at the SEC meetings. A couple of the things that were discussed, along with the NCAA ruling that schools can now play athletes directly up to $20 million. Now, when I think everyone read that, guys, I think they thought, hey, every team in football can spend $20 million. You got to remember there's Title IX, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Title IX affects this. Because I think if you asked every athletic director, they would say, hey, football makes the most money. Why don't we funnel, 75% of the money into football? So what is that, about $15.5 to $16 million, something like that, $15 to $16 million. $15 million into football. But can you do that? Because you also have to put money into women's sports, I believe, if I'm right on Title IX. This is going to be interesting. There's going to be a lot of court cases coming up, but we do know that you can have up to $20 million. We'll see how that gets divided. Now, in the SEC meetings, that brought along where the coaches and athletic directors met about roster size. You had Mike Elko from Texas A&M saying, absolutely not. I want to keep it the same. You had Steve Sarkisian have a lot of interesting comments at the podium, basically where he said, hey, the NFL has a lot of stuff like this figured out. I think we should copy a lot of their mold, copy their path going forward in some of these things, some of these aspects. I don't know if he means that for roster size because, guys, most Division I teams are 115 to 120 players. The NFL's 53 plus a practice squad of about 16 guys, so that gives you, 69 players? I don't think that's feasible, nor do I think it would be appropriate to force a college team to cut by that many players. Imagine cutting, what is that? 50 people from your team. And this is not professional sports. I know people say it is, but it's not. These guys, a lot of these guys are way closer to high school and their development and what they look like than NFL. Most of them are. So you're going to ask them to play more games, sustain more injuries for less money. That is exploitive to me. If I was a college football player and they cut roster sizes, I would be talking about that. I think that would be wrong. Hell, there's going to be lawsuits about a bunch of other stuff. That might be another lawsuit that could go forward because I don't like that. I think it's wrong. You'd also be getting rid of walk-ons, which I think is a gigantic part of college football. So I personally believe if roster sizes were to be trimmed, I think scholarship-wise, maybe if you want to knock it down from 85 to 80, I think most coaches would be fine with that. But I personally believe it should be about the same. I think you should stay between 80 and 85 players. Anything more than that's ridiculous cut to me. And it would hurt the athletes. It would hurt the coaches. And it would physically actually hurt the athletes. I think you'd see a lot more injuries. You would not be able to practice as much either. If you notice about the NFL, they do not practice. They rarely go pads on and hit each other because of that reason. You don't have that many bodies. You have to stay healthy. A lot of the times it just turns into a war of attrition. And I'm going to let you guys know this. This would hurt smaller schools more. It would. Expanding would do the same thing. So I think we've found a kind of perfect part of the rosters aren't too big. So the big schools like Alabama and Texas can't hoard really good players on the roster. And they're not too small where if you're really good players on, let's say, like a Kansas were to get hurt, you're not going to have much depth there because you don't really recruit that one. Your rosters got cut. So I personally believe this should be about the same size. Like I said, I think 80 would be the minimum you have to have. So I really hope they don't cut it, guys, just to share more money with the players. I really think in the long run it would hurt college football. So I'm hoping they can keep it between 80 and 85. If you cut it, 80 would be the minimum I would cut it to. Yes, hit that like button. Thank you, Sonny. Let's get Texas at the Voice College Football. Up to 3,000 subs, that'd be fantastic. Please share this out with your family, friends. If we could get me up to 500, Jackson, that'd be phenomenal. I don't tweet enough. I know that. I'm not a big social media guy myself, but I'm trying to get out there a little bit more. Thank you, John, for joining as well. Hit that like. Exactly. Thank you, John. Yeah, it's an interesting time in college football. I'm sure next year we'll be talking about something just as crazy as cutting roster sizes. You know, when I first heard this, when I heard roster size change, I thought, oh, they're going to expand rosters. No, they're cutting. And I, again, just disagree with it. I don't think that should be a case. Again, Sark talked about the NFL and things they can copy. He talked about free agency and something of that sort. Because basically right now, guys, what we have in college football, we have an uncapped free agency. There's no contracts. You basically have thousands of free agents every year. That doesn't happen in college football. You have guys who are taking NIL payments in the fall, jumping into the portal, getting more money going in the spring, and then jumping back in. I think there's multiple cases of that. I believe the guy, Tyler Barron, I believe his name is, going from Tennessee to Louisville to, I think he just went to Miami. I can't even keep track of some of these guys. We are in this teetering point. And I think Steve Sarkisian talked about this a little bit at the SEC meetings, and we have to decide. And I think the two conferences that are most important to this are the SEC and the Big Ten. They are going to decide for the rest of the college football world how things are going to be run going forward. I don't believe the NCAA is going to decide these things. I think in Destin and wherever the Big Ten hold their meetings, that's where this will be decided with Grant Sankey and the SEC and the commissioner of the Big Ten. We'll see what happens there. I don't know what happens. The sport can go either way. It can get more popular or it can get less popular. I really don't see it staying the same. I don't. It's a teetering point, and we'll see what happens with that. But something did come out today. Everyone loves to talk about this, so let's jump into this. I think, honestly, going into this, I did a little bit of research. I thought the FPI rankings were crap, guys. I really did. I think most people think the FPI rankings are a bunch of crap. They're not as bad as I thought. I went back to last year, looked at the preseason rankings, and then where these teams finished and how bad or right the FPI was, and it was right on a lot of teams. There were very few teams that it was just dead wrong on. So let's jump into that, guys. We'll talk about this year's rankings first right now. So according to the FPI, this would be the SEC standings for next year. Georgia at number 1, 10-2. Texas at number 2, 10-2. And by the way, I rounded up or down based on, because some teams got like 7.7 wins. I rounded up to 8. You can't get 0.7 wins in football or any sport, so I'm not going to count that. Alabama, 9-3. Third best team. Oklahoma, 8-4. Tennessee, at 5, 8-4. And by the way, Oklahoma shocked me. Number 4 is crazy, and they're 8-4. And then this is where it got a little bit confusing for me. Number 6 is Missouri at 9-3. They have a better record than a couple teams ahead of them, but they're 9-3. I think that has to do with the schedule, but FPI has them at 9-3. LSU at 7, 8-4. A&M at 8, 8-4. Ole Miss at 9, which is shocking, 8-4. So a lot of teams jumbled up right there, 4 through 9 at 8-4. And then Missouri at 9-3 at number 6. Auburn, 7-5 at 10. Florida, 6-6 at 11. South Carolina, 6-6 at 12. A little bit surprising for me here. Kentucky, 6-6 at 13. Arkansas, 14 at 5-7. Mississippi State, 15 at 5-7. And Vanderbilt, 4-8. Really only a couple surprises there. Ole Miss at 9 really shocked me, especially 8-4. I think that's Ole Miss's floor. I really think that. I think their ceiling is 11-1. I think their floor is 8-4. And then Oklahoma at 8-4. I think Oklahoma's going at 7-5 this year. So that one did surprise me as well. But the top 3, that wouldn't shock me if you got Georgia, Texas, and Alabama. I think Alabama is being heavily slept on. Yes, they lost the best coach of all time. but they're still Alabama. They still have a lot of talent. And just to give you a sense of how these ratings are put together, basically it's a power rating, each team's strength relative to an average FBS squad. Offense, defense, and special teams are included. I'm hoping he doesn't weigh these out evenly. I hope he puts more towards offense, defense, and special teams, gets like 10%. But I mean, we'll see. I'm not 100% sure on how he does that percentage-wise on his calculations, but that is how Bill Connolly at ESPN puts this together. Now, this is where it gets kind of interesting, guys. I went back last year. So last year's rankings of the FPI, I also included Texas and Oklahoma into this. Bama 1, got it right. Georgia 2. In last year's SEC, Georgia would have been 2. And we'll actually just run through this, then we'll get what they actually did. LSU 3, Texas 4, Oklahoma 5, Tennessee 6, Ole Miss 7, Florida 8, A&M 9, Kentucky 10, Arkansas 11, Mississippi State 12, Auburn 13, Mizzou 14, which dead wrong on that, South Carolina 15, and Vanderbilt 16. So the bottom looking about the same. So now we'll jump into it. Bama. Got perfectly. Bama was the number 1 team last year in the SEC. FPI predicted it as the number 1 team. They predicted Georgia's 2. It ended up, if you include Texas, as 3, so that's not that far off. LSU was the 5th best team in the SEC, got 3rd. Pretty close there. Texas would have been 4th, according to the FPI. They were 2nd, pretty close. Oklahoma was 5th. Now, this is hard to do because there would have been a jumble of teams. I know Oklahoma went 10-2. SEC is a harder league, so I bumped them down to 7th. As the SEC, but they predicted them 5th. So again, pretty close there. Tennessee was 6th. They were 8th in the FPI. Ole Miss was 7th. They were 4th in real life. Now here's the next two this next one is your biggest disconnect so far. Florida was 8th in the FPI going into last season. They were 11th in the SEC. So that was the biggest disconnect. A&M was 9th in the FPI. They were 9th in the SEC. Kentucky, 10th in the FPI, 13th in the SEC. The next biggest disconnect. Arkansas was 11th in the FPI. They finished 15th in the SEC. Mississippi State was 12th in the FPI. They finished 14th. Auburn was 13th in the FPI. They finished 10th. And then the biggest one, they got this team completely wrong. And I'd be interested to see if there's like one big disconnect in every conference. Maybe there's multiple. But this is by far the biggest because honestly, other than this team, they did pretty damn well. You could argue Arkansas and Florida were way off, but they're off by 3 and 4. It wasn't gigantic. This is way off. Missouri, they had 14th. Missouri, they had 14th, and they were 6th. That's a gigantic disconnect. They weren't even close. South Carolina was 15th. They were 12th. Vanderbilt was 16th, 16th. So, honestly, if they would have nailed Missouri, guys, this would have been a pretty damn good list. It would have been a lot better than most people predicting. I'm wondering why they were so far off on Missouri, maybe with the transfer portal. I know their best player, Cody Schrader, the running back, was a transfer, and he transferred up from Division III, so that's really hard to tell. So who knows if that could be one of the main reasons why. Let's see. Voice of College Football is coming for ESPN and Fox. That'd be awesome if we did that, John. What if DeBoer beats Georgia? It's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible. Not impossible at all. Like, I think Alabama's the most slept on team, but overall, the FPI did a better job than I thought. I think from a preseason ranking, they do a decent job. My issue with FPI has always been in season. You'll see head-to-head results in season, and you'll still have the team that lost ahead of the team that won. That never made any sense to me. I totally disagree with that. Preseason, I actually think they did a pretty good job. Now, like I said, there was one gigantic disconnect. It was Missouri at 14th. They finished 6th. So going through this list of this year, guys, I'm trying to think who I would have as like the big outlier here. I mean, it's kind of hard not to say Ole Miss. So there was an 8-spot difference. So Ole Miss, if there was an 8-spot difference, would be the best team in the SEC. That's not going to happen. I'm not predicting that Ole Miss to win the SEC. I think Ole Miss is probably at best the second best team in the SEC. At worst, I think they're probably the 5th best team. So I think that's probably your biggest disconnect. I could see Tennessee being the 5th best team. I could see Missouri being the 6th best team. Oklahoma being up the fourth, I honestly would just probably flip Ole Miss and Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's probably the eighth or ninth best team in the SEC. I think Ole Miss is probably the fourth best team in the SEC. I don't hate these rankings. These aren't terrible. You might see Mississippi State and Vanderbilt flip. Mississippi State might be the worst team in the SEC. They've been pretty damn bad. This offseason has been for them. I mean, you lose Quintavious Marks at running back, who is probably your best offensive player. Overall, I don't think they did a bad job. Let me know in the comments how you think they did. Overall, not terrible. And like I said, you're going to have my rankings by the time this offseason's over with. Like I said, we've ranked quarterback rooms. We've ranked running back rooms so far. We've ranked coaches. So I still got offensive line. I got wide receiver. I got defensive line. I'll probably do secondary, and then I'll do linebackers as well. So we'll see how that goes. But I think I'll have some changes in here. But overall, FPI I thought did a pretty dang good job. Rob Mitfield, October 19th, Georgia at Texas. Yes, I think you could argue Texas and Georgia and Oregon and Ohio State are the four best teams playing in the regular season in the two best games of the season. I don't know if they'll be the two most fun games, but I think those might be the four best teams playing each other in the regular season, which is really cool to see, especially with the new conferences kicking off. I think overall, the games I'm most excited to see, I want to see Texas and Texas A&M. It's been a long time. Let's see, I was like 11 years old the last time they played, 11 or 12 years old. So it's going to be awesome when they play, guys, really awesome. I think Tennessee versus Oklahoma kicking off their SEC games with Tennessee. That's going to be a fun game. I think Michigan versus Washington, a rematch will be a good game, even though I think I take it back. It'll be a fun game. I think Michigan wins that game rather easily. I don't think Washington really has much on that team that I'm excited about. Let's see here. USC going to the Big Ten. There's just a lot of exciting matchups, and I think it will only get bigger and better because of the 12-team playoff. That is the one of the good things about the 12-team playoff, bigger games. Somebody should play the Hey Arnold theme song every time we see Jackson Arnold. It would be awesome that happened. Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know if he would like that. I honestly don't even know if he knows who Hey Arnold is. He's pretty young. I feel like you have to be, 24 years old or older to know who Hey Arnold. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be completely wrong on that. He may know exactly who Hey Arnold is. That'd be pretty interesting, though. Yes, John, please hit that like button. Everyone subscribe here. It really helps out. Like I said, if I get more comments, I can keep up with you guys. I don't have to carry the show. I don't mind carrying the show, but it is the off season. It's harder to carry the show in the off season. There's not much to talk about. I'm glad the FPI did drop today, so it gave us something to talk about. And next week, I will be ranking wide receiver rooms in the SEC. So far, Texas has taken the quarterback and running back rooms. You can call me a homer. I believe I had Steve Sarkisian as the fourth best coach, so you can't call me a homer on that one. But I expect Texas to carry a lot of these rooms in the SEC for the offense. Defense, I have no idea. Defense will probably be middle of the pack, honestly, in most, but we will see. Geez, I must be getting older if some people don't know about 90s Nick shows. Hey, the 90s were 25 years ago, Jackson. So, unfortunately, we are getting older. But this is the Horns Huddle 7th edition here, live here on Mark Rogers TV. The Texas channel is what we're on. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Let's see. Get back to your comments. 89 days till college football from Rob. Yep, 89 days. And I don't know if John's still on here, but let me tell you, we are going to corner the market on Texas versus Michigan week 2. You got myself, you got John, you got TJ. They do a great job on their Michigan channel. Go over and subscribe to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think that's going to be a really good game. I thought Texas and Michigan last year, I would have favored Texas in that matchup. I like the way we match up versus Michigan. Styles make fights, and I'm scared of that game not because of Michigan's defensive line. I like our offensive line. I'm scared of their offensive line versus our defensive line. Our defensive line is the biggest question mark of our team, period, especially the interior. I'm confident in our linebackers. I'm confident in our secondary. I am not confident in the interior of the defensive line. I think we have talent there. I think we have a lot of talent there, but it's unproven talent for the most part. And a couple of the guys that we got in the transfer portals are guys that were good rotation players. And a couple of them, like Jermaine Lole, really good player. Health issues, though. Big health issues. If he can play to his potential, then I feel more comfortable. Play to his potential and stay healthy, then I feel more comfortable about that. But we will have to see. If Texas can beat Bama and Tuscaloosa, then I believe they can beat Michigan and Ann Arbor. There's a lot of similarities there, Jackson. Going on the road week 2 to a historic football site to play a historic team with a brand new quarterback. That was Jalen Milroe's second start. It will be Alec Orji's second start. Alabama had a good defense. Michigan has a really good defense. The question mark is the offense. The question mark is the offense for Michigan. A lot of similarities there. And that is the reason right now I would pick Texas to win that game is because of the quarterback position. Look out through the history of football in general. If the teams are close, the team with the best quarterback usually wins, and we have the best quarterback we will have the best quarterback on that field and in Ann Arbor in September. No doubt about that. So it's going to be interesting. Except Michigan is starting over. Yes, coaching staff is the only difference. We caught Alabama a year earlier. If we would have caught them this year, they would have been starting over as well. I don't know if Texas will win the SEC, but it wouldn't surprise me if they won it at all. I think there's a group of 5, maybe 6 teams that can win the SEC. I think Texas is in that group. Obviously, Georgia. I would pick Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama. I'm going to throw Tennessee in there. I think Tennessee is a dark horse in the SEC. Missouri is one of those teams I teeter on. I do not know. I just don't know. Can they put back-to-back great seasons together under Eli Drinkowitz? He was on the hot seat. So I have no idea if this is a carryover, if he got lucky last year. We will see. They have the talent. They had a good recruiting class. They had a good transfer portal class. I like the 2 running backs they got. One guy from Georgia State. And then who was up for the Doak Walker Award, by the way, is one of the best running backs as the best running back in the country. And then they got another guy from App State. So I think in the aggregate, they will be able to replace Cody Schrader. But it's going to be hard. It really is. And then LSU, to me, they have no defense. If they had a defense, I think they'd be fine. But I think you're going to see similar to last year. I think the offense gets a little bit worse, but the defense gets a little bit better. But in the aggregate, they're probably going to be about the same. I think they're probably a 9-3 team again. And that's honestly the last team you could even put in that conversation. I'm not putting A&M in that conversation. I'm not putting Auburn in that conversation. I'm definitely not putting Florida in that conversation. But I think Tennessee is the team to watch out for, guys. I really believe that. Michigan's game plan will be similar to versus Washington. I would agree with that, John. I just think we have a better run defense than Washington did last year, especially Washington got shredded in the first half of that game. I don't expect that to happen. Could it happen? Absolutely. I would say, though, another thing that people don't talk about, look at Quinn Ewers' numbers versus the blitz, and then look what Wink Martindale loves to do. He loves to blitz. Quinn Ewers destroys them. So I hope he decides to blitz that day because I think that will be an advantage to Quinn Ewers. Our interior defensive line is filthy. Graham and Grant are the best best in the country, in my opinion. 100% I agree with that. Texas will have trouble running the ball, so Wink Martindale can focus on Ewers in the pass game. I don't think we'll be able to run the ball, but I think we can do what we did versus Alabama last year, which is average like 3.5 yards per carry. That's all you need to keep a team honest. I'm not saying we're going to run it down your throat because we're absolutely not going to do that. It's similar to what Texas had last year with Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. You guys have the best duo in the country this year, so it's going to be very interesting how that game's going to go about. It's going to be a really fun game. Meanwhile, I think Texas weakness on defense is a bad sign since we returned Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mongs, and starting running back QB Alec Orji. Yeah, I would expect Alec Orji to carry that ball 10 to 15 times in that game. If you don't, it's a disservice. Just like Alabama not doing that with Jalen Milroe last year was a gigantic disservice to him, it would be a gigantic disservice to Alec Orji to not run the football. In my opinion, Texas' two new interior defensive line boards are better quality than the average Big Ten fan may think. I don't disagree with that, LFG. I like Mike Norton. I like Jermaine Lole. I think they're decent players. Sia Tavia as well. I think we have better depth in the interior than last season, but we don't have a first and second round pick. We just don't have that. Unless Alfred Collins, again, I'll say it again. If Alfred Collins can play to his potential on a down-in and down-out basis, that changes things. That changes things wholeheartedly. If Alfred Collins can do that, he'll be one of the top five defensive tackles in the country. I have yet to see that, though, so I'm not going to say he's going to do it. Well, that's because Bama's offensive coordinator was Tommy Rees. Yeah, now he's the tight ends coach for the Cleveland Browns. So somehow he, I don't know, found a job that was equally as good, which is crazy. He's not good at his job. But yeah, I don't even know who Michigan's offensive coordinator is. I couldn't tell you that. We take a polished offense into Ann Arbor against its team struggling with the new QB and coach. I wouldn't say struggling. I think Michigan's still going to be a top 15 team in the country. I don't know. I think they're probably, like I said, between the 10 and 15 range, and I think we're probably in the 4 to 8 range, honestly. Closer to 4 than we are 8. But home field advantage does matter. But I will say, I just have this feeling Quinn Ewers going to have a really good year. That's all I'm going to say up to this point. It's too early. We are 3 months away from that game happening. When we're a month away, we'll get into that. We'll break it down further, and I'll let my true thoughts be known. By the way, I've been called out this by Moose, and John knows who I'm talking about. I said if there's going to be a blowout, Texas would be the one to blow out Michigan. I did not say there'd be a blowout. I do not think there will be a blowout. I'm saying if there is a blowout, I think Texas would be the one to do it because it's really hard to do that when the teams are even through your running game. Perfect example of this is the Rose Bowl between Georgia and Oklahoma. Teams are even. They could not stop throwing Oklahoma. Georgia ran it down their throats. It was 52-49. It's rare, almost impossible, to blow a team out if they're even running the football. You usually have to do it through the air. OC is now Kirk Campbell before he was the QB coach. Okay. That'll be interesting. Yeah, you're breaking in a new quarterback coach. There's a lot of new coaches there, but I like all of them. Like, they all have good pedigree. Wink Martindale, I think, is a decent defensive coach. Obviously, I think Sharon Moore did a really good job when he filled in for Jim Harbaugh. It's going to be very interesting. I think you would say this, John. The biggest loss for Michigan is the strength and conditioning coach, Ben Herbert. So it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a fun game. Again, guys, this is the Horns Huddle Show live. I am your host, Matthew Miller. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. We are every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm hoping to have some guests on in the next few weeks. Again, next week, the plan is if we don't have a guest, I'm going to break down the wide receiver rooms, rank them, see where I put them in, where I think Texas will land in that. My guess, I'm just going to guess. I haven't looked at any wide receiving room other than Texas. I'm trying to think if there'd be anyone better. I don't think Georgia would have a better room. LSU, possibly. Let's see. Alabama, possibly. Oh, we're not going to be number one. I know my number one's going to be. Just looking at the list, it's going to be Missouri. And Missouri's going to have the number one wide receiver room. You have Luther Burden and Theo Weiss. That's going to be the number one room. So Texas will not be number one next week when we're ranking wide receiver rooms. I can tell you that right now. We're definitely not going to be last because I'm going to assume that's probably going to be Arkansas, Mississippi State, or Vanderbilt. I think Texas probably falls in between 2 and 5. Just guessing. But Missouri, I'm telling you right now, that's going to be the number one wide receiver room because I think it might be the best in the country. I mean, if your 1-2 punch is Luther Burden, who's probably going to be the first wide receiver taken, at worst the third wide receiver taken in next year's draft, and then Leo Weiss, who would probably be second, third round pick, and then Mookie Cooper as well. Yeah, that's the best room in the SEC. So it's going to be very interesting when I'm breaking that down. 24 Texas O-line, a good bit better than the Alabama and Washington offensive line, Michigan punctual. It's definitely better than Alabama's, no doubt. I think Washington and I think Texas has higher upside at the left tackle position with Kelvin Banks. I think we have higher upside at the right guard position with Devon Campbell. I think everywhere else is kind of similar to Washington's offensive line. I will say that. Herb was one of the 3 primary points of contact, accountability coach for everyone on the team, and helped establish a tough culture. Yep. Within the SEC, yeah, not Texas. Within the SEC, question mark, yeah, not Texas at number 1. Weiss is okay. A&M has nice wide receivers. A&M does have nice wide receivers as well. But when you have Luther Burden, it's going to be hard to top that, especially you got to realize a lot of these guys aren't returning, like Ladd McConkey gone at Georgia, Brock Bowers gone at Georgia. Texas doesn't have A.D. Mitchell or Xavier Worthy or Jordan Whittington. Alabama, I don't even know who their wide receivers are, honestly. Jackson may be able to tell us that if he's still there. Oklahoma does have a pretty good wide receiver room. They'll probably be up there. Tennessee, no idea. Missouri obviously has a good room. LSU with C.J. Daniels, the transfer from Liberty. They always have a couple good wide receivers, so they'll probably be up there. A&M has a couple. Ole Miss has a couple. Auburn, a lot of talent, but it's young, so we'll see. Florida, South Carolina, Kentucky, Arkansas. Yeah, at worst, Texas is going to have the fifth best room in the SECs. But again, we will get to that next Monday. I really appreciate you guys being here. Again, every Monday, guys, please join me, 7 p.m. Eastern time for Horns Huddle Live right here on the Texas Show, only on the Texas channel. So please go over, subscribe to the Texas channel, hit that like button, subscribe. 7 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Central. What would that be? 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific. If you're in Hawaii, I have no idea, but subscribe, watch it with me. We're getting closer, guys, and we're going to get more content on here. When the season's kicking off, we'll probably have 3 to 4 videos a week. So please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Hook 'em, guys.